Looking at the big picture, this shorter 7th world adds so much to the pacing of the overall story. After the brutal assault on the keep and the bait and switch boss fight, there's this one beat of dead air before the climactic battle, a chance for the pacing to settle before ramping up again for what seems to be the final time. But Screeches Sprint, the only level of the Flying Krock, unfortunately didn't get the memo. This is part 56 of Overthinking Donkey Kong Country 2. Might seem a bit overkill to dedicate an entire video to the Flying Krock, but it's getting one. And besides, the Flying Krock's just as interesting for what we almost got as it is for what we did get. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Flying Krock appears overhead as Krool scampers up the rope ladder and the Kongs give chase. And here, we're taken to the 7th world of the game, the Flying Krock. I feel like I'm saying the Flying Krock too much. It's a pretty lackluster image, though it is well composed. 3 key locations being the castle, the brambles, and the Flying Krock itself. The bowed rope ladder connecting all 3 and drawing a clear line through them all. Perspective's all fucked up, and I kinda wish we got a bit more detail in the background, but who knows, maybe the devs didn't have much time to give this map the polish it deserved. The ship itself looks cool. I don't really dig the overwhelming green, but it is what it is. The Flying Krock overworld map feels a little empty, and it does seem a bit much for one level and one boss, and if you thought that, you'd be right, but at one point, it was going to have more going on. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So first, let's look at what the Flying Krock has to offer. Not a lot, it turns out. A level, Screeches Sprint, and a boss fight, Krool Duel. Though to their credit, both level and boss are top-notch late-game experiences. Screeches Sprint takes us back to the brambles for what is almost the final time. Look how beautiful this level is. This is surely in contention for best-looking level in the game. The fall colors perfectly match not just the tile set, but the music. The gameplay starts off relatively unassuming, with a handful of clingers and Cat O'9tailses showing up, before handing the baton onto Squawks for the highlight of the level, the massive race against Screech. For some reason, Screech always seemed like the parrot on the pirate Captain Krool's shoulder, and here he is, trying to buy his master some time. The race itself is a pain in the balls, and one of, if not the, hardest part of the game. Screeches Sprint feels a lot like a mini-boss to me. The difficulty spike right before the final boss, the unique enemy showing up for this one level. I don't know, this game doesn't really do mini-bosses, but this is about as close as it gets, right? Anyway, beat Screech and there's nothing between you and Krool. The fight against Krool sees us in the cockpit of the Flying Krock. The Kongs walk in on Krool, literally point blank blasting our buddy DK with cannonballs. What an asshole. I've been over the fight in its own episode, so I don't want to go on about it for too long. It's an arduous fight, but never tedious. Difficult, but never unfair or insurmountable. It's a fucking ripper of a fight, and one that has respect for the players who made it this far. Also, how fucking gorgeous is the cockpit of the Flying Krock? This is an incredible screen for the supposed final fight to take place, and honestly, one of my favorites in the entire trilogy. The devs really lifted the bar here. Between these 2 levels, the aesthetics of the Flying Krock are some of the strongest in the game. It's hard for me to quantify the Flying Krock's place in the overall story. I suppose it serves as an extension of the 3rd act. After the peak of Toxic Tower, the twist of Stronghold Showdown, we get a change of pace in that first chunk of Screech's Sprint, before ramping things up again in the second half and setting the tone for the final fight. Fuck it, I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. We beat Krool, or DK does, and he's shark food. The most interesting thing about the Flying Krock to me is what we didn't get. It seems that this was planned to be a full world, at least 5 levels strong, with new, sky-themed tile sets. As for whether or not those levels would be like in the clouds or on the airship itself, or some combination of the 2, I don't think it's ever been established. Thing is, DKC2 took a lot of ideas from Donkey Kong Land, and in that game, we get both cloud levels and levels on a Zeppelin. I doubt this world would have looked like either of those, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential for both in the DKC2 setting. The clouds at dusk, or cotton candy pink over a powder blue sky, maybe the rotten green sky we see in the foreground, and dark storm clouds. The green of the airship would make for a strong tile set too, and we get a decent look of what it could have looked like in Krool Duel. Oh well. The airship does kinda sorta return in Donkey Kong 64? Not really. It's a different airship entirely, but the King Cruiser 2 is clearly influenced by the Flying Krock. It's a bit off topic, but I have a cool memory of that airship. So at the end of DK64, it crash lands on the edge of DK Island, opening up access to the final boss, somehow. A friend at school had taught me how, as Giant Chunky, you could glitch through the corner of a cliff to beneath the island, and somehow, doing that, I ended up inside the airship. It was a fully explorable cockpit, flashing lights, monitors, the whole 9 yards. Absolutely fucking nothing to do in it though. One last thing I want to talk about are the brambles. See, it always shit me that they just sort of appeared. Even as a kid, that lack of continuity felt like a cop-out to me. But maybe there's a bit more to it than that. Maybe the reason they don't appear on the overworld map prior to the flying Krock is because they weren't there prior to the flying Krock. We've talked about how these vines, almost supernatural in size and prevalence, have snaked their way up from the base of the island and up past the tallest tower. And as we'll see, they can even be found deep in the Lost World. So maybe these brambles, or more accurately, the power behind their accelerated growth, is almost done consuming the island. Part 56 down, and almost done with the recap episodes. Can't think of a good way to end this video, so I'll just end it badly, I suppose.